name is Karla Adams, and welcome to day 5 of the 30-day clean eating challenge. My tip for you today is emotional intelligence. And I have this amazing book that I want to recommend that you pick up and just start plugging at like 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day. One of the major growing statistics in society is emotional thinking. Okay, emotional thinking is one of the #1 things that actually gets somebody right off a plan, or makes it very, very difficult to stay on a plan. Okay, the more factual and boring somebody can be, just really boring, the easier it is. Actually, the easier it is for them to succeed, the easier it is just to go through a process, the easier it is to change, and the easier it is to realign the emotions. And I bring up the emotions because the emotions are a key part in a lifestyle change. We have to shift your emotions to be back in balance. If you're unable to stay on a nutritional program, some emotion is involved in that. And something might be just misaligned with your emotions. And it needs to get shifted back into balance. Okay? And this book is a great book to actually point out some of those things. A great example of a non-emotional thinker is my testimony for today. He's a surgeon, Dr. Sabu. So he very simple, just follows the same thing every day, kind of just very boring, same routine, same everything. There's no ups and downs, there's nothing added to it, it's just very, very boring. That is the opposite of emotional thinking. Emotional thinking, there's a lot of stuff added to it. And it gets more exciting, and it can be more entertaining, or it can be just a lot of ups and downs, good, bad, or neutral. So emotion can be positive, and believe it or not, people get addicted to emotions. We actually, our body, it's chemical based, it's mental, and it's physical. So each one of our chemicals actually takes physical space. You can put it in little different jars. You can put anger, sadness, whatever. Every single emotion that you can imagine, you can actually put it in a separate jar, and it has a different set. It has its own set of chemicals. It has its own name. It has its own thing. And your body builds unconscious habits of working in certain processes, just like your mind does. And if you are a person that maybe grew up in a very heightened environment, you're more likely to have a lot of heightened emotions along that formula. Like whatever formula it was. It doesn't mean you have to stay in that or that it's a conditional. You can even go through just a short phase of your time where those emotions are even heightened from a situation. But the ones I'm talking for are not temporary ones, they're more the ones that get developed and kind of get in our habits, and our thought process kind of fuels those different emotional processes, from the habit of thinking something and then the habit of the emotion, that emotional chemical coming out. Okay. So what's important in a lifestyle change is shifting that emotional experience so that our emotions are actually supporting us rather than sabotaging us. So whenever somebody has a trigger, right, and that can be Starbucks with the sugar drink, or whatever your trigger is, right? There's first a chemical reaction that you're craving that, but then there's an emotional experience after it that's habit and a thought process. All those things are actually happening at the same time. So one of the key ways we know somebody's actually going through a lifestyle change is their emotional experiences towards natural occurrences in their life starts to change. Okay, I'll say that again. How we know somebody's going in through a lifestyle change, their emotional experiences, what comes out of them, starts changing along the situations that have been in their life for a long time. Right? They've been there. The situation didn't change. The person's emotions and experience towards that situation changed over time. For example, lifestyle change is not when we're sitting at a table and we can't do this and we have to do that. Those are emotions. It's when we're sitting at a table and we're just not attracted to this anymore and we're really attracted to this. That's a lifestyle change. Okay, that's somebody going through, that's something intrinsic that changed within them, okay? And we can shift those. If you actually do self-development, lifestyle change properly, those emotional experiences change. How cool would that be to go into all your existing environments with your family, with your coworkers? I mean, just think of all the areas that you actually struggle, right? We have triggers. That's called a trigger. And you're like, this is the time I always struggle, and a person might be involved, or it might be when you're by yourself, right? So those are the situations. Those are actually the exact time periods that we need to actually target in a lifestyle change. We need those emotions to change. What if you went into those trigger areas and you felt nothing? It was boring. What, if like, just for example, just a common one I always hear is like, oh, people are like, oh, I have a family event, I'm stressed, this is all the stuff that happens, and then I always do this, and then I feel bad afterwards, and it's this story, right? This story about the event, right? Well, what if just we were computers and we could just clean the slate, the computer in our head, right? If it was a computer, but it's not, of all those emotions. They could go into that environment and they wouldn't even think about any of that stuff that bottom number 4. It just would not be there, right? So that's just an example, and you can actually develop that in yourself. And I say the word development. The key word development is very, very important. We are not computers, okay? If you were a computer, if everybody was a computer, you wouldn't be watching this video. You could go spend $14 on a book and be done. But we as people, we get conditioned. Good, bad, and neutral. Years 1 through 5 are the most programmable years of a person's life. So when you were going through years 1 through 5, you got subjected to all these good, bad, and neutral ideas that shaped you and experiences and shaped your emotions. And then 5 through 15 are the next stages of that. So when you were going through 5 through 15, you had another layer of things that shaped you. So by the time you were a teenager, mostly everything had already been ingrained in your super, super, super unconscious and with your emotions. Okay? And if there are things within that time period that are not in alignment with your belief system or things that you value or want in your life, then those are things that you want to work on and change. Okay? And you want to do that with self-development. Okay? And the hard thing with nutrition is chemical. And then we're in the information era. So, and this information here, 100% triggers emotional thinking. What do you think marketing is? If I broke, I mentioned 80% of the world's ideas come out of marketing and media, right? All of them, like 80% of them, right? And that's the number one shaper for our social norms. And then we look out in society and it's like, oh gosh, look at how the percentage of emotional thinking has actually increased. Did you know anger or people just reacting? And anytime we're just reacting and it's not based off of like an actual like logical critical thinking thought process, it's some form of emotional thinking. And in my opinion, all people suffer from emotional thinking from a very small degree to a large degree. And we actually, to help bring balance into life, we actually want to determine where we're at in that spectrum. And how rigorously honest we can be in saying, okay, I think I'm a little emotional thinker, I think I'm in the middle, I think I'm a high, right? So I'm an emotional thinker, I'll admit that, but I understand where I'm at with emotional thinking, and so I have more balance because of that, okay? And that's what we want to do, is target more balance, right? So I'm not sure that we could ever reach perfection. When you look out in this world, there's not a single perfect thing out there, so that gives me the impression that nothing can be perfect. There's always going to be a percent error. So accepting that we're just going to have that percent error of imperfection, and just understanding what it means to be us, brings the most amount of peace and happiness, I believe, and helps people just reaching an end goal. So I highly recommend that you pick up that book. I highly recommend you start analyzing yourself on a daily basis to understand where you're at on the spectrum of emotional thinking. Because the higher you're at on that emotional thinking, the more likely you are to self-sabotage things you want to develop into your life, okay? The more likely you are to self-sabotage things you want in your life, the higher you are an emotional thinker, okay? So the more boring you can, if you're at the high spectrum, the more boring you can become, and the more you can just stop in your mind and stop going down that trail, just find a place to stop, the more it's going to aid you in the process of changing your lifestyle in a subject that is not in balance for you. Okay? So I really hope you enjoyed the tip today. This is 100% like one of the number one things it said, you know what, I have another thing. I have one more thing I want to share, because it's so repetitious that I experience this when I'm actually working with people. And I've worked with people for 23 years and I've listened to them, right? And understanding why we fail. And we're humans, we're imperfect, so we're going to fail, right? Why we fail helps others succeed. So that's why I share failures, is to help others succeed. And also people, you know, on that. When people are coming in, rewriting their own plan, when people are, if people can't, if, you know, what it looks like, if you want, here's a really good comparison of a non-emotional thinker, which I have Dr. Salou afterwards, he's a great example of that, and an emotional thinker on a nutrition plan. This non-emotional thinker, I can hand them something and they'll follow it, and they'll just come back and say, I followed that, and it worked or it didn't work. And then we change it and then we move forward, right? An emotional thinker, they'll be on a plan. It does not matter whether the plan is actually working or not. That's the difficult part. I'll have them come back in before we even have a chance to actually look at the results of what that plan was, and they've already changed it. They've changed it because of something somebody told them, or they've changed it because marketing said something, but something in their life within a 1 week or a 2 week period of time triggered their emotion, and they wouldn't jump ship, okay? They jump ship, okay? That's an emotional thinker. They're jumping ship all the time. And that's actually why they fail at a plan. That's the person that does plan after plan after plan after plan. But that's not the only reason why they fail. I need to point that out, okay? I talked about having the right plan. Okay, if those people are not on the right plan, that failed them before they even had a chance to be an emotional thinker. Okay, and then when you're combining an emotional thinker with a ton of imbalanced plans out there, you have a teeter-totter. And this is probably the number one teeter-totter out there that has people hopping on and off plans, on and off plans, on and off plans. Is that they're not a factual thinker, so they can't even figure out whether it's the right plan or not, right? Because they're hopping around. And then the plan is not even correct. And some of these plans that are not correct, like if somebody should be on carbohydrates and you eliminated all the carbohydrates, that'll actually increase the emotional thinking. It'll actually it will increase that person's ability to not think correctly. A good example of that is the blonde joke, right? You guys have all heard, you know, that people make fun of blondes saying that they're dingy or whatever. Well, blondes aren't dingy. The reason why that actual joke came about is because a lot of the original blonde models happen to be blonde. And if you were a blonde, if you were a model, you actually didn't eat very much, okay? The only thing your brain runs off of is carbohydrates, okay? And when you don't eat enough carbohydrates, you get dingy in your mind, okay? So a lot of these models, they'd be a little extra dingy because they're not eating, because that's what they had to do for their profession. They had to be really, really skinny, right? And so they got extra dingy, and so it started all these blonde jokes. What do you think is happening with all these low-carb diets? Like, that's the number one marketing campaign, that's the number one fad diet right now, is a no-carb diet. And you know, there is truth out there in reference to some of the information that's out there, but again, it's another fad. It's another popular way to reorganize just natural food. I hope today's tip helps you, okay? I hope it helps on just understanding the difference between emotional thinking and non-emotional thinking. The more non-emotional you can become in your thought process, the also happier you'll be, because you have more peace if you're not wrapped up in emotions or upset about something. So that'll just even help with just overall life balance. So I hope you enjoyed those tips today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and eat clean today. Bye. So here's a little interesting, here's a little interesting story that you'll like. I'm sure you guys have all heard of the blonde jokes, right? That people are saying, oh, blondes are dingy and they're dumb or whatever. Well, blondes aren't dumb. Anybody can be dumb. But the reason where that came historically in time is because most of the original models were blonde. And to be a model, normally people have to be skinny. And so it was very common that you would have people that would undereat or just, starve themselves. Well, the only thing your actual brain runs off of is carbohydrates. Okay, that's actually the only thing your muscles work off of also is carbohydrates. Okay, so when you actually don't have enough carbohydrates, it actually depletes the brain and thought processes and affects your serotonin levels, and it can actually put you more in an emotional state. So if you're an emotional thinker, this is some key information that you would want to know, because if you're on a plan that puts you too low on your carbohydrates, it can actually kick into more emotional thinking. I've been doing nutrition plans for people for 23 years. I've mentioned that multiple times. I deal with people in competitions, right? And when you deal with people in competitions, you deal with them in the most extreme types of dieting environments. They're in high exercise and you're really micromanaging a bunch of nutrients and you're just basically analyzing stuff, okay? Those are very emotional times because of the nutrition. When I have somebody in a competition that's just about to step on stage, especially if they're a woman, especially because women and men were just made differently, right? There's different, emotions or whatever, chemical makeups, but they are very emotional, very emotional. So can you imagine if you're on the wrong plan that puts you completely depleted and you already have the habit of emotional thinking, how that could actually sidewind your plan? Because you just don't feel well, you're not able to think well, your emotions are completely whacked out. Women, we know how that is, because it actually happens once per month, right? Well, men, we know that too, because you get to experience it. But, so emotions are a key part, but these are just things that a lot of people aren't taught or understand about our emotions and our brain and the way that we work. But emotional intelligence can bring a lot of happiness and balance into people's lives, and 100% is important in succeeding at clean eating or any type of lifestyle change. So I would take the time to understand where you are on the spectrum of an emotional thinker and where you want to be, okay? And how that's actually affecting your plan. And if you're on a nutritional plan, has it heightened your emotions? Has it thrown you out of balance, okay? We need boring and repetitious for lifestyle change. Okay, hope you enjoyed the tip today. Bye.
Hello, my name is Subbu Nagapan, and I've been in Riverside for over 30 years and a physician at Riverside Community Hospital. And I started off trying to go to the gym as usual at the local gym and trying to work out, but I always just gave up because nobody was there to guide me, motivate me, and educate me how to do this. Finally, I ended up here at Karla Adams, and it's been great for the last year and a half. It's given me more strength. And I work long hours, and this has given me more than what I need to sustain and keep it going. Like this weekend, one of our physicians got fired, and I ended up taking 60 hours of call all in a row. And I'm still here at the gym. So that should be more than adequate to let you know that I'm really thrilled with this place and feel great come in. And when I leave, I'm well rested in some ways. Like today, I got a meeting that I need to go present something in front of 800 physicians, and this will calm me down so I can do it the right way. As far as results, I've lost weight, I've built up more muscle. I was always flabby everywhere. Now I can actually look in the mirror and see some muscles in there. Not greatest, but it'll get there eventually. And as far as stamina, I have much more stamina than I did. I had a lot before, but now I have much more. And everybody at work thinks I'm literally a machine and can keep going, while others, even younger people than me, can't tolerate the hours that I put in. During my surgeries, I can go 5-6 hours and not be tired or stressed and keep going. So that's helped a lot. And concentration's helped, just being more physical fit and be able to do long cases. I've been able to be more focused and concentrated on what I'm doing. And that is something I've gotten out of being at Karla Adams physical training classes.